So you want to write a book. How does that look like? What do you do? I'm going to cover a couple of these things, but today in Literary Deep Dives and Discussions, instead of doing a literary deep dive, we're going to backtrack and give some advice to want-to-be authors. So here are my 5 pieces of advice. And again, welcome to everybody who's coming back. This is Aliski, the author of the Unseen Operative series, which combines mystery with sci-fi, psychological thriller, and philosophy. And perhaps someday I will twist romance in there. We'll see. But anyways, just as a side note, I've noticed that I laugh a lot during these podcasts. It's just the way that I kind of fill in things. So random side note there. But as I've been pondering becoming an author the past couple months actually, a couple things have really stood out to me that I really wish to emphasize to new aspiring authors, things that I believe would be most important for you to understand. My number 1 piece of advice is this: aspire to more. I'm not saying do more. It's a very, very different thing. What I'm articulating here is strive to become more as an author, improve more as an author, improve your work more as an author. And that might sound like a lot of work, and it is. But you see, attitude is what makes the difference here. Let me ask this. What is your biggest fear? I will tell you mine. So my biggest fear, my biggest FOMO, whatever you want to call it now, I don't know what the kids say anymore, but my greatest fear is coming to the end of each year and eventually my life to realize that I held myself back, that I prevented myself by laziness or selfishness or pride from becoming the best version of myself, from accomplishing what I hope to, yes, but accomplishing it well. When I say aspire to more, I am not saying aspire to be perfect. See, as I've been reading a lot of other indie authors' books, there's a part of me that dies inside for a lot of them. There's a couple of them that have really blown me away, but there's a piece of me that dies inside because I read through and there's so much more that could have been put in there. There's, lacking vocabulary, punctuation, grammar is sketchy, and sometimes like the plot line itself, it just dies. And I don't want to finish it. And I do finish it just for the sake of giving them a review. But I die inside because they could be so much more. And I've talked to a couple of the authors and they admit, I wish I had edited more, etc. And what I'm really glad about is that they are going through and doing better for their next pieces. They're aspiring to more, which is definitely something that you should do once you've published. Aspire to be better for the next time. Do that. But in the process, if you're catching this before you've ever published, please aspire to be more and don't try to be a perfectionist. You will never write a perfect book. There will never be a book without errors. Every best-selling author, every professional author, no matter whether they're indie or traditionally published, will tell you that their books probably have a couple errors. And that's just life. We're humans and we have humans editing our human work. And so, it's impossible to have a perfect book. Don't be a perfectionist, but aspire to be better. Aspire to progress yourself, gain experience and skills that you do not currently have, or you don't currently have as well as you perhaps could. Again, back to my FOMO is I don't want to reach the end of anything knowing that I could have done better and grown more or taken an experience and pushed myself to be more and added quality, but I didn't, letting myself down. For me, that's what I would define as a living nightmare. And those are actually my real nightmares, which is kind of funny because if you've read through the Lattice scheme, I literally have a drug withdrawal nightmare and all of the dreams in there come from actual dreams I've had. And that was a pretty panicky dream, but I was totally chill afterwards. Whereas if I have a dream where I realize that I've let somebody down, which I have had dreams like that before, I'm utterly devastated. I wake up in a sweat. I'm panicked. It often does trigger a real panic attack the next day. I can't handle it. That is a living nightmare to me. I don't want to fail myself. So what is it that holds us back from being more? It's, myopia of risk. It's a risk fear. We don't want to risk something bad happening. We don't want to put ourselves out there in case we failed. We're so afraid of failure that we don't push ourselves. Failure is such a concept. We're going to talk about it sometime in the upcoming podcast. It's a lot like mistakes. It's often given a negative connotation when failure isn't final, and that is a fact. Oh, great alliteration there. I should put that in a book. But yeah, it is not final. If failure was final, then how come time doesn't stop? Failure in exercise, my favorite perspective of failure. Failure is literally your muscles tearing so that they can rebuild themselves up into something stronger and better. That is failure. And that is what you want if you're trying to gain strength, build strength, all of those things. So why is it then that we are so paranoid of failure? It's because we're actually afraid of humiliation. And that's not necessarily an unhealthy fear to have if you use that fear to drive you to aspire to be more. If you let that fear paralyze you, then good luck. Like, you probably will actualize that fear happening if you do publish something because you're so paranoid about it. But if you use that fear of humiliation to take the risk to aspire to be more, to push yourself to grow and make this book the best masterpiece that you possibly could, with all the grammar and deeper philosophy messages, everything that I'm about to share with you, then you are going to overcome that fear and you're not going to be humiliated. You're probably going to gain confidence. In fact, I guarantee you will gain confidence if you aspire to be more. Even so, risk, it is a thing. And it's a topic even brought up in my book, The Lattice Scheme, several times. Azure, she's always pushing Detective Granger that, hey, I know there's a risk in this, but it's a risk worth taking. And she pushes that again and again and again. And he's not necessarily against it, but being in a higher position of law, he has to kind of calm her down and be like, look, it's not about risk. It's about doing the right thing for the right reason at the right time, ethically. We'll get into that in the future. I love those two's banters. It's never anything I pre-plan. It just happens. But risk is brought up several times. Anyhow, I'm going to offer you a different literary perspective from James William. He's an American psychologist. I don't know much about him. I have bought one of his books that I'm going to read. And it's going to be fantastic when I do read it. But here's something that he says about risk. Not a victory is gained. Not a deed of faithfulness or courage is done except upon a maybe. Not a service, not a scientific exploration or experiment or textbook that may not be a mistake. Only by risking our persons from one hour to another do we live at all. And often enough, our faith beforehand in an uncertain result is the only thing that will make the result come true. He goes on to say that, suppose you're climbing a mountain, and at one point your only escape is to leap across a deep chasm. Have faith that you can make that terrible leap, and your feet become nerved to its accomplishment. But mistrust yourself, and you will hesitate until all unstrung and trembling, you roll into the abyss. Refuse to believe, and you shall indeed be right, for you will perish. But believe, and again you shall be right, for you shall save yourself. If you make one or the other two possible universes true by your trust or mistrust, both universes having been only maybes before you made your choice. Essentially what he's saying is everything that happens in this life is a risk. And if you have the attitude that this risk can result in something great, I'm aspiring to more and I know taking this risk is going to get me somewhere better, it'll happen. That's what we ecclesiastically call faith. You have a belief and you act on it equals faith. That is my definition of faith. It's not just believing, it's acting on that belief. And it's argued in a very intricate series of essays called Lectures on Faith that faith is literally the driving, living principle that all things operate by, whether they know it or not. For example, if I believe I'm going to eat breakfast, I get out of bed. I'm acting on that belief. I get out of bed, I go to the kitchen, and you know what happens? I eat breakfast. Just happens. If I have the belief that I'm going out of the house for the day in public, I tend to dress nicer. Or even if I have the belief that I'm going to go and I don't want to go, I'm still going to, put on clothes and go outside because I believe it and I'm acting on it, regardless of the attitude. So attitude is going to make or break you, yes, but faith is the driving principle by which all things are done. Where you put your faith is where you end up with that. Anyways, back to risk. Risk is an attitude and it has a purpose. Viktor Frankl was an Austrian psychologist. So he survived years of trauma in the Nazi concentration camps, very famous for his book called Man's Search for Meaning. Very great book. I would highly recommend it. Very philosophical. Most of the books that I read are, which makes you wonder why I'm a crime writer. I will get into that in the future, but this is about my advice. So Frankl, he wrote that those who have a why to live for can bear with almost any how. It does not really matter what we expect from this life, but rather what life expects from us. The last of the human freedoms is to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. The meaning of life is to give life meaning. He says that, the tension between what one has already achieved and what one still ought to achieve or rather the gap between what one is and what one should become, that inherent tension is indispensable to mental well-being. Therefore, we should seek to challenge ourselves to exert our own will to meaning rather than seeking the comfort of a tensionless state. The tension between the real and the ideal is not a threat to our safety, but is the call of a potential meaning waiting to be fulfilled. So just consider that. When you're writing your book, when you're composing your plot, when you're planning on putting to words this incredible idea and drive and message in you, consider that attitude. Give life meaning through your words. Give your work meaning. Take that risk and make it become something great. That's what fills the gap. And yeah, there's always going to be that tension, that risk and that tension between the ideal and the real. But really living isn't about getting rid of the tension. It's not. It's about working with it. It's about letting it fuel you into something greater. You know, the what, the how, the why, all of that is basically built on our attitude to what we want to happen with our works. So what does this mean for authors and creators? Expand, grow, refine your work. You know, we're not writing a quick math assignment. This book, this creation, it is your baby. It's your baby princess. Okay, your $8 billion gem, and you're going to take care of it. You better take care of it as such. And I don't mean by like a fragile diamond. I mean like a growing child. Like nurture this like a growing child. You want this book to grow into something more. Draft number 1, you know, that is like years 1 of the child's life. And now you're going to enhance it with grammar, with prose, with sentence structure, with vocabulary, with paragraphs, descriptions, content, subject exploration. Like put so much more of that in there. And I would love to see so much better vocabulary in books. I really strive to elevate my vocabulary, not to the point that it's like so formal that nobody can understand it. Nobody wants that. But in illiterate America, we would do good to heighten our vocabulary. We really would. And I mean especially and particularly less F-bombs in it. Why? Because I'm not saying there's anything wrong with cussing. I don't personally do it. I don't support it. But let's be honest here. The cuss words that we use in this life, in this generation, are not going to persist 50 years from now. And we can prove that because looking back in history, the same things that used to be, you know, slang for bad and cuss words are no longer considered such. Prime example, GOAT. GOAT is an acronym in our days that means the greatest of all time. Took me years to learn that, but guess what? It does. What I'm used to it meaning, because I watch a lot of classical films, GOAT is literally derogatory. If you're the GOAT, you're the crux, you're the joke, you're the letdown of the entire society. You know, you failed. You're a GOAT. It's a derogatory thing back then, but it's not anymore. So it's, you know, if you're going to use modern current vocabulary to curse or whatever, just know it's not going to be very timeless. That is my thing. If you make up a word that matches your fantasy characters more or whatever your genre is, probably going to last longer and be better. It's also going to help illiterate America. You know, let's stop writing books for adults at a 3rd grade level. Let's stop writing like we're watching Family Guy and start writing like we are writing a powerful meaning. So that is part of what I mean by aspire for more. Be more than the basic. Make your book as good as you want it to be. If you want to be one of those top-notch authors that people centuries from now are like, yeah, this person, they were great. Aspire to it. Okay. Descriptions, you know, make your scenes cinematic to the mind. Practice it, visualize it, use your 6 senses. What in that scene are they tasting? Are they smelling, touching, movement, hearing? How? You know, we are so blessed in the English language to have an astronomical amount of adjectives and adverbs. Filipinos do not. I bring that up because I speak Filipino, Tagalog, and there are Filipinos in my book, and the language is in there. Not every language out there has as many adjectives and adverbs as does the English language. We have so many words at our disposal, like use them, enhance, and it really creates a better difference than the stereotypical that now AI can write. We want to be better than AI, and we can be. Let's use our senses and our words. Content, for mercy's sake. Let's please write more content, more meaningful content, more lasting content than just heat building up in sex or killing people. I don't write mystery and crime just because I enjoy killing people. I don't. I legitimately cry when there is a death because my characters are foremost based on real people and also because I care about humanity. I'm writing mystery and crime to explore humanity. That's the difference between me and a lot of crime authors. But really, if you're just writing because you have a fascination with people dying or killing people, that's what we call a mental disorder. Get that checked. I hope that's not the reason that you're writing. Now, if it's an avenue to deal with that, talk to your psychologist, talk to other people that can really help you to deal with that. And maybe it's okay to write, but, just be cognizant of being more. Aspire to be more than just a person venting. For any creators out there, if the only reason you're creating your song, your content, your videos is because somebody hurt you, don't be surprised that it doesn't last very long. Yes, there will always be angry people making angry content. There will always be people obsessed with sex and romance making that kind of content. It's completely unoriginal. And it might help you to let out steam, and that's great, but reiterating it isn't healthy, and it also doesn't help anyone really. Stirring up angry feelings because you want to feel like someone else feels as angry as you by listening to someone be angry, when has that ever done good for society? Hasn't. So that is my 25 cents on aspire to be more. Subject exploration. That goes into advice number 2. My second thing of advice is to add deeper meaning. Why do we love and remember books like The Lord of the Rings, The Chronicles of Narnia, The Hunger Games, Cinderella, Harry Potter? It's not because of frequency. It's not because of popularity even. It's because of the power of the deeper, relevant, relatable messages that are found therein. Like, I have felt Harry's frustration with school dynamics and the fight between right or wrong. Who hasn't felt that? Who doesn't? Like, whether you watch the movies or read the books, whenever he's having a squab with Ron or Draco, like, we relate to those situations so much. We see ourselves in it. We remember that. We all love, the struggles with injustice and disparities, losses, and, rights versus wrongs, politics, the unlikely circumstances, the unlikely heroes, underdogs, limitations, risks, and relationships. We all relate to these things. So if you want to have a great book, put depth about humanity in there. Yeah, my favorite romance book that was written by my mother-in-law. I'm not super into romance for a lot of reasons, but my favorite romance book that she wrote, it had a person that was struggling from cancer, and her mindset focus on it was that cancer was robbing her of all joy in the present. It was her scapegoat. It was her blame. And I relate to that. Like, the only reason I recall that book, among other romances that I've kind of forced myself through, is because of that connection of having a condition and being angry and feeling like it limits my life so much, whether it's overcome or not, or whether it's just possible to happen. It's relatable. It sticks with me. And that's the kind of message you want to put in your book. Something that sticks with someone, carries with them, so that, when others ask them for a book recommendation, they're like, oh, let me tell you about this book I read and why I remember it, because it touched me. They might not say it in that word. They might just say, hey, this book is super good. But the point is, it sticks with them because it relates to them. Human exploration of topics of meaning stick with the reader. So your book is more than just entertainment to them. It becomes a friend, an experience. That kind of book isn't easily put down or discarded or forgotten like many others. That's what we should be aspiring to. So put the deep meaning in there. I hope that is the kind of book you want to write. That is the book that I wanted to write. My greatest accomplishment so far as an author, well, I have a couple of them. My first one is learning and growing by aspiring and striving for more through the process of editing, becoming an author, and continuing to write. But the second greatest accomplishment I consider right now up to this point is not making sales, is not anything like that. It's having a reader actually write and bulletin board quotes from my book that related to their situation. And they've sent me those quotes. And I don't know, it just seeing that, I wrote that, or rather God through me wrote that is the way that I see it. But I wrote that and it's on their bulletin board now. How cool is that? That I could bring meaning to that person's life. Amazing. Like that is the greatest reward, I swear. So yeah, timeless stories, they come from deeper meaning. I would rather have a less successful book now than one that lasts long and sells, one that lasts temporarily and sells hundreds, makes that person rich, but they're trashed or recycled before the person is dead. Things that have deeper meaning last longer. Your book will probably last longer even if fewer people read it. To me, that's the long picture that I take. That might not be your goals. As an author, you really have to cater this to your goals. If the only reason you want to be an author is to make money, good luck with that. And I will just end that comment there. So my third piece of advice, learn to love editing and revision. This is a number one topic you will see so much about before you become an author, after you become an author, especially on the socials. It kind of goes with my first piece of advice, but it has to be its own section because it is such a struggle for so many. Fear of correction, the struggle of correction, it is a learned behavior and it's not a good one. It's one that makes or breaks the longevity of your story and the quality of your book, as well as your motivation and your commitment to writing that book. I've read way too many 5-star potential indie books that settled for a 3-star or less because they didn't get an editor or edit very well, or their story fell flat. Like I've mentioned before, they didn't aspire for more. They just popped out a book. I'm not saying they didn't put a lot of work into those books because they did, but they still popped it out prematurely. Revisions are the difference between a kind of book and a 5-star book. A mind-blowing book. So for me, my personal experience was, my first draft, I was unconfident about it. In fact, I could even say that I was kind of embarrassed to share about it, to talk about it. I was a little bit scared about it. Like if I had published my first draft, I would be utterly humiliated. I would. Not because the story wasn't good and the idea wasn't good, but because it was so unrefined, so lacking still. And so many authors still do that. They settle for not revising and re-editing more when it's like, if you would just push it past the third version, I promise you the sense of embarrassment others feel for you as well as you might feel for yourself will totally turn around. If you commit yourself to learning to love editing and revising, you are going to gain confidence. You are. Like for me, my goodness, it took me 7 drafts to write the Lattice Scheme the way that it is now. The original 3 drafts, nothing like the final book. Even the storyline it's not there. The person that was the main bad guy, not the main bad guy. And it's just, things change so much, but it is so much better now. And I have confidence in it now because I went through those painstaking times of revision, of editing, of considering what I hadn't considered, of pushing myself and aspiring for more. I have confidence in my book. Like it's published now, and I can tell you very distinctly that there are that I'm aware of 3 mistakes in it. There's 2 spelling errors, a name that's misspelled, a word that's misspelled twice, and then a lack of quotation marks at the end of somebody speaking that I'm very well aware of, and I could go back and fix those and re-upload it. I'm not going to though, because I'm confident that even without fixing those 3 changes that I'm aware of, because of all the other things that I've revised and edited and fixed, that it's still a fantastic 5-star book. See, you don't need perfection. If you write a book as long as mine, there's a point that you kind of need, you need to step away and just let it go and improve on the next one. That is what I'm doing. But I have confidence in that book. I know beyond a doubt how great the quality of the content, the subject, all of it is because I cared to invest myself in that revision correction process. I went through the pains of being, told this part sucks and this part makes no sense. I've done that and it was painful, and I'm so glad, I'm so proud and mind blown that I've gone through it. I'm proud of the book that I have written and published, and I'm still improving with book number 2 from it because again, the book ain't perfect. It's so great that I'm confident in it, but this next book, I'm going to boost that up even more. I'm going to love editing and aspire for more. Actually, sometimes the editing process, for me, it's become so fun that sometimes I like it more than writing. Tweaking it to become more. Tweaking it to be all the better until I can feel comfortable that this is it. This is the right storyline. This is the right plot. This is the right way things should have happened. Right now with book number 2, I have rewritten the ending 4 times. And I say ending, it's not actually the ending. The ending for me before the 6th or 7th draft is usually the chapters leading up to the ending. But I've rewritten all of that 4 times, and I still think there's a 5th revision that I'm going to make there. because it's not quite right, but I'm excited to see how I can play around to make it feel and hit just right, to be suspenseful, to really carry the story, to get the points through that need to. It's an astronomically exciting challenge for me. Like I mentioned, I go through a seven draft process. It's not actually 7 drafts. It's difficult to explain. I say 7 just to give you a number. I tend to write halfway to about 2/3 of the book. Then I go back to chapter 1. I read through it. I continue to add 4 or 5 more chapters to that. And then I go back again to chapter 1, read through it, continue writing from there. That's how you write long books, in my opinion, but it's how I keep the details smooth. It's how I keep things aligned. When I'm about 700 pages done, I start editing chapter 1. And the reason that I do that before the book is finished is because any changes that need to be made, revising a lot of the storyline, main plot points, details, all of that is so much easier to change before the book is already written to an end. I would rather revise before I finalize the end in that sense. So that's what I do. I do that a couple times. I tend to have about 32 plus chapters in my book, and my current published book is 738 pages. The second book is going to be longer. It will probably be about 950 pages, more or less. That is a really rough estimate. But yeah, I go halfway through, I go back. I go halfway through, I go back. And I add a little more each time until it is complete. So I do that up until about the 4th draft. Then I hand it off to my proofreader. I love my proofreader. He gives me lots of little notes, chapter per chapter. He gives me questions and details, and it helps me kind of assess that, are these the questions I want my readers to be asking at this point? And do I address them later? Is this a matter of importance for me to edit? Yes or no? If it is, I go through the pains of revising it. So it's a really fun process, and it's a very stressful process. It's a very crushing process sometimes, because sometimes the parts that I feel like are on point and awesome and people want to know these details, he's like, no, nobody cares about this. And I'm like, why? That is the process. Biggest advice with editing, use read out loud. There's a feature on Microsoft Word, that's what I use, that reads out loud your manuscript. To be able to hear it as you follow along will really help you with the grammar, to get the voice that you really want. And it is utterly necessary to hear your book, how it's supposed to be read, how you want it to be read, before you ever set it to being made into an audiobook. I'm still working on getting the Lattice game into an audiobook, but yeah, that was a consideration that I had. So I like to hear it. And I do that once or twice, several times because of my weird process of going back and forth. I do it several times so that I can go through and correct the grammar while I'm also watching it. But then it's really essential for me, the very 6th time that I edit, put that in quotations, I know you can't see my face, but quotations there. The 6th time that I edit, I am listening only to the audio. So I am multitasking. I'm like doing home reno. I was doing kitchen reno for the Lattice game when I did that. For this one, I'll probably be moving, but different story. I'm multitasking while I listen to the book. And while I'm listening to it being read out loud, sometimes things will pop out to me like, wait, what? How does that make any sense? When did that happen? Did I miss something? And whenever I have those questions, I take notes so that I can immediately address it, because I know I'm going to need to address it. So definitely use that senses. You hear things differently than you write them sometimes. So it's good to kind of use different resources. Now, I don't personally write an epilogue until after the final draft is complete. The epilogue I edit it on its own. I baby it on its own. I don't print and edit like a lot of authors do, because I can't afford to. I don't have money for paper and ink. I would love to do that. I also don't like hunching over a table and going back and forth between the computer screen and the paper to make edits as I go. That's just me. But ultimately, at the end of this, what this piece of advice comes down to is find out what works for you, learn to love it, and make it fun. If you're having an editing session and you need to be jammed up, like get some snack foods, put on a song, get pumped up for this, and then do it. Grit your teeth and get through it. And it will be a process of confidence boosting. If you can picture it with that right attitude, that I am boosting the confidence of this book being a success. I am aspiring to more. Keep that in your head. And even on the long days, you're going to get through it and you will learn to love it. Advice number 4, be informed, not conformed. You are going to get a lot of advice online of how to write, how to be successful, what to write, etc. And 90% of it is going to be people legitimately aggrandizing themselves or making money off of you. I say that because it's It really is true. I also say it because, frankly, no process is going to work for everybody. The methods that made my mother-in-law a best-selling author, they do not work for my genre. They do not work in this day publishing. Now, she became a New York bestselling author less than 17 years ago. But even so, the times have changed because the technology and publications, all of that has changed, and they will keep changing. A year from now, the methods that work today will not work as well. Algorithms change. Interest in what to read changes. When you might get across videos that say publishing in 2026. This is how you should publish your book. It's fine to watch those videos. It's fine to get advice from those videos. Definitely become informed of what is available and what could work. Definitely do your research, listen to what others have done. Please be cognizant that if somebody's publishing a video about what 2026 publishing looks like, or 2027, the next year rather than where you're at, these are all predictions. They have not lived or published a book through that year yet. Therefore, they cannot actually say what is going to be successful for that year. That's just how it is. Also, everyone's situation is different. I live in Wyoming. Wyoming is what we call #2chill. Does that tell you which generation I'm from? Hashtag. People here do not respond quickly or often. Not because they don't care. It's just the way we do things. We're just chill. We'll get to it when we get to it, So trying to really market a book in Wyoming it's a dying game in a lot of ways. In 5 years, people might care about my book, but not before then. Not because they don't care, but because they'll get to it later, It's different in a place if you're surrounded by people who read a lot, who have a ton of bookstores, who are enthusiasts. It'll take off better. Just any advice that you hear, especially online, please take it all with a grain of salt. Note trends of what works and what actual authors have said work rather than influencers. And you can identify influencers who are influencing for their genre rather than actually writing, because they will have an astronomical lot of time to be posting Instagram or TikTok reels every single day. If you got time to be doing that, when is the writing happening? It's not. Or you're relying off of somebody else's money to live because you don't have a decent job. Or maybe you are successful as an author. It's a rarity, though. It is a rarity for a book influencer to be a successful author. Your path really ultimately is going to be through trial and error. Become informed about what could work. Understand different paths others have taken, and know that you are going to try things and they're not all going to work. Some things will work, some things won't. Some things will work for a month, some things won't. Huge thing right now is, Amazon KDP works brilliantly for some genres and some authors, works terribly for others. My first month on it was awesome. My second and third months, no, not so much. So, everything fluctuates. Nothing works 100% of the time, and nothing is 100% the same for every author. I'm really sorry if that disheartens you, but that's just how it is, period. I'm not going to sugarcoat it like others might. I just want you to know that there is no quick success to authorship. Those are the exceptions, not the rule. And in a world full of trillions of people, we're probably not going to be exceptions in this category. So be prepared for not being the exception. Trial and error. Also be aware that you will be bombarded by scam offers and robots 24/7. Before you become an author, if you're on any social media and you mention I'm going to write a book, they will be after you. You are their prey, and they are just hooked and ready to just shoot. And they come at you in very convincing ways. Just very important to be aware of that, especially with AI. AI is getting a lot more clever anymore. Don't take any scam offers. Definitely become aware of those. Become aware as well of opportunities and resources that you could use, but don't necessarily checklist what you should be doing to become an author, even if others seem to suggest it or highly pressure you to it. For example, a lot of folks will tell you need to be on Goodreads, you need to have an author site, you need to do beta readers, ARC readers, and you don't actually. You don't need to do any of that to publish a book. I published my book before I did my author site. My author site literally came 3 weeks after I published, and I'm totally fine. Totally cool with that. It's a pretty jazz site. I've got a lot of things on there. I've done a lot of work to really vamp it up. So an author site will be necessary for your long-term success, especially if you're self-publishing, but you can make it after publishing. Social media, it doesn't do anything. I will just tell you that off the bat. If you're trying to sell your book through TikTok, through Facebook, through Instagram, that used to work a couple years ago. It used to be massively successful. Google and AI will still tell you that it's successful. I will tell you statistically speaking, it is not. And I'm just talking out of my sample size of about 250 authors that I've spoken to who have aggressively tried TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, and they have not sold very many books. Some of them got, a couple hundred sold. Some of them only got like 2 or 3 books sold. I personally have, through those mediums, only sold 10 books. So, if you're trying to look for big sells, don't do it. Case point is be informed, not conformed. Now, the conformed part, I'll talk about that in a second. There is a portion of the lattice scheme that actually is very, very prevalent to this topic. Let me see if I can find it. It's on page 217. As you're trying to become an author and you're getting bombarded by these loads of information, this is Detective Granger's advice to you, which is the advice he gave to Azure when she's trying to figure out how to do all these sorts of operations as a infield detective, which she was not prior to the dramatic entry which brought her there. But he says, dynamics are difficult to define. As a newcomer to external operations, that is bound to be an additional stumbling block on your current load. You must not be hard on yourself, nor should you try to be in the know on everything. Some knowledge only comes with time, and right now, you've got enough on your plate. Be aware of that. As you are writing your book, you have more than enough on your plate to deal with at this moment in time. Please give yourself grace. Focus on what's on your plate instead of trying to checklist and do everything else that everyone else has already done. You will have plenty of time after you've published your book, or even right before you're about to publish your book, to really get that done. It does not do good to frantically try to do everything at once. You might really want to publish a book this year, and honestly, it might be in your better interest to take a longer time period to publish it, to gear yourself up for success. That is a reality. Don't be hard on yourself. Don't beat yourself up. Don't be frantic. It's not going anywhere. People are not going to write the story that you just wrote and produce it. They might produce similar things, but if you truly treat this book like your baby, like your queen, like I said, it's not going to matter what other people write. Yours will be good enough. In fact, it will be better because you took time to really treat it right and take care of it to get to that publishing process. What do I mean by conformed? I mean your sources. Don't write what you're reading. Especially don't write exactly what you're reading. If you want to be a mystery author like me, it's good to have some mystery books under your belt. Like I've read lots of Agatha Christie this year. I've read Sherlock Holmes. Nancy Drew was my jam growing up. But mostly my sources of reading are not mystery. I read nonfiction. I read nonfiction theology specifically. And that's what most helps me write the lattice scheme. That is what I read. I also read lots of health studies, behavioral health studies, psychological studies, family studies, human development studies, and that has helped me to better write the lattice scheme. If you are writing a fantasy book, reading a bunch of other people's fantasy books is not going to produce a new or different or better fantasy book. You're probably going to write a mix of things that you just already read. It's great to be inspired and want to write something like that, but if that's what you're consuming all the time, your plotline, your story is probably not going to be super original. And I'm not saying that to hurt your feelings. I'm saying that to be realistic. Your source material, if you want to genuinely make something cool and different, cannot be, don't read what you're going to write exactly. Read something different, something related, something interesting or relatable, but please don't just start writing the thing that you're reading, because it's unoriginal. Your sources also shouldn't just be books. You should be getting inspiration from lots of sources around you. A lot of my favorite sources are classical films. I love classical film noir. I love classical film comedy. I love espionage films. I love just anything black and white. I love Lucy. I do love Lucy. There's so many shows and things out there that are great inspiration, but even better than that is observing nature and observing people and having real life experiences. In my book, The Lattice Scheme, I used my experiences of living in the Philippines. I'm half Spaniard, so I've had a lot of exposure to the Spaniard culture. Things from Europe, I've had a lot of exposure to that as well, to Mexicans, to Polynesians. All of these things I have put into my book because those experiences have been meaningful and powerful, and they've been real. So that's part of getting a deeper meaning in your book, is you have to have sources of experience, of nature, of people, of observation. Make something original. Don't be a book wannabe because you're just reading what you're about to write. Variety is the key. You can read fantasy if you're going to write fantasy. You can read mystery if you're going to write mystery. But please, mix it up, add variety, do something different. So that's what I mean by be informed, not conformed. Don't be the same as everybody else. Don't try to be other authors. You need to be informed and be yourself. You are a unique author. So number 5, stay off social media. Stay away from it. If you want to be an author, stay far, 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 far away from social media. Specifically book social media. Those book reviewers, other authors, stay away from that until you're like right about to publish. That is my biggest piece of advice. Number 5, number 1 still trumps that, but yes, please just don't touch the socials. Why? Because comparison is the thief of joy, and social media is its beachfront property. It will rob you of any joy, sense of purpose, motivation to write. It will rob you of that so fast. At first, it might seem exciting, and you're making author friends and getting potential readers, and no, that's all a facade. Sooner or later, a couple weeks in, you are going to realize, especially as those robots start trying to scam you, that it is robbing your joy and your motivation. See, online, we perceive others as far more successful than they are. We just do. We have the snapshot judgment that tells us that they're doing good, that they're perfect, that they have it all together. And we get disillusioned by it, especially when we find out that they're not actually doing all that well, or they're not actually that well liked. Like there is a certain author, I'm not going to mention her name, I almost did, but she writes a really great book series, and she's really popular on Reels on Facebook, TikTok, because she makes hilarious Reels with this goblin character that she's created. But her book ratings are not that fantastic, which is interesting. And it kind of disillusions you because you're like, hey, I thought you were fantastic and doing so good, even though you never said that. It's just what I'm seeing. And it kind of makes you lose a little bit of faith in that person. That's just the thing that I've seen across life is whatever judgment we make visually, we get really disillusioned when it turns out that what we see isn't the exact depth of what is. I mean, if you look only at my social media, you'll probably think I'm a lot more successful than I am because I only post things that are positive and exciting. What I'm not showing you is the difficulties that I go through in life. I'm not going to be dishonest about those, which is why I talk about them on my podcast. Those are snapshot judgments that you're bound to make because that is what is put in front of you. Be aware of that for further consideration. There's another quote I want to share with you from my book. This is something that Wagner says to Azure when she's asking him why he's so cryptic, but it applies to social media. He says, not everybody operates with integrity. That much you ought to have gathered. Whether it's in conversation between us or others or the work we submit to, it's good to seek out truth and the foundations. Consider carefully how delicate a matter it is in any place when one individual rises in ego. The damage such a one can cause yields impacts far greater than the eye can measure. That needs to be kept in checked. In Azure, she kind of replies later on, mysteries are never one-sided or clean-cut, are they? What one deems worthy and worthwhile is subjective to one's culture, knowledge, opportunity, and understanding. Those are things to keep in mind. Not everybody operates with integrity, and everybody has a different standard based off their culture and their circumstances. That's what's posted online, and that's what's being shoved at you as a potential author. Be aware of that. Don't compare yourself to that. You are unique. Your situation is unique. Your life is unique. And I hope that your book and your process of becoming an author reflects that uniqueness, because that is what makes you a great author, is you being entirely you, not conforming to what's already been done, not conforming to an exact standard checkbox of how others became an author, not writing just the basic, aspiring to be more. Your own unique authorship is yours. Own it. Make it. Again, social media doesn't sell books, so why be on there if it's pretty much only going to be a constant rat race of trying to compete against other people's reels just for very few book sales? It's not a bad idea to put up an ad on there on occasion. It's not. It's not bad to connect with other authors. I'm mainly on there to get authors upcoming for my podcast in the coming year, but if it's a fun thing to do, that's one thing, but don't do it just to be like everyone else, to compete, or if it brings your emotions down, your emotional health, your mental health down in any way, please just stay off of it. It's just a waste of time. Those are my 5 pieces of advice. Aspire to 1, add meaning to your book, learn to love editing and revision, and be informed, not conformed, and stay off social media. If I could put bonus advice to this, my number 6 would be to live a normal life. Whether you're an introvert or not, I know a lot of authors are introverts, please live a normal, healthy life. There are too many depressed authors out there. Too many of us lack variety and experience and are depressed. And a lot of our books reflect that because we lack that deep experience that we really need. The number one thing that Hallmark got right in their cheesy, overused plot lines is somebody shoving an author out to have a real life experience and their inspiration comes back. Because that's, that is how it is. You need world experience. You need to live. You need to have interactions with other human beings. You need to observe things, see things, have variety in your life. Your social health, your spiritual health, mental, physical, financial, all of those things impact your ability to be a good author. And if you're not taking care of them, there's a problem. Also, writer's block on that note. Writer's block, I don't believe in writer's block the way that it's articulated and used. I don't believe your mind just loses ideas. What I believe is it's a signal of an imbalance going on. That either you have been putting way too much of your time and energy and focus that it is just completely fizzled out and fried and you need to take a break, or else maybe you haven't been eating properly. Maybe you haven't been exercising properly. Maybe you need more sleep. Maybe you need some social interaction. One of your needs, your vital needs to being human, is not being met. And that stymies the imagination. Overdoing things and underdoing things. That's what's being signaled with writer's block. Address that thing, discover and address that thing, and I promise you the writer's block is going to go away. That is my 25 cents on writer's block. Have I experienced it? Yes. And every time there is that imbalance and I step away and I get moving and grooving in life and taking care of my needs, things come back better. You don't lose any progress by that. Kind of like this is a concept in exercise as well. A lot of folks think that if I take a rest day, it's going to set me back on my gains, and it actually does the opposite. It improves your gains. So those are my 25 cents. Writer's block. My seventh piece of advice, if I could have it, is please be your own champion. Please love yourself, champion your book. Stand up for yourself, be proud of yourself, because no one else knows your story like you do. Nobody else knows this incredible world you've created and the characters you've put in and the meaning and the depth that you put into it like you do. Nobody will appreciate it to the depth that you do. And because you do, if you can champion that and show that, be excited about it when you speak about it, when you post about it, when you blog about it, when you vlog about it, when you podcast about it, if every time you talk about your book, you put that passion of what it means to you in it, others will want to read it too. Guaranteed, way more than keeping silent and being depressed because nobody's buying my book and nobody has the enthusiasm like I do. They probably won't for a while. But when you get that one reader that does, bam, gold. And you won't be prepared to talk to them about it and be excited with them if you're not championing it yourself. Be your own champion. Be your own team player, your own best friend, all of those things. Because what you're creating is incredible. You're bringing into existence, especially if you're being different from other authors, if you have meaning, your own unique meaning put into that book, you are bringing into creation something that was not there before. Doesn't matter if it uses elves like others do. Your creation is yours, and that is incredible. That's worth celebrating. So please, 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 please celebrate it. Celebrate your process of becoming an author. Give yourself a high five every day. I would give you a high five if I could. If you don't have any author friends, hit me up on my website. I will be your encouragement. I would love to encourage you. I'd also love to read, be a beta reader to help you out if that is what you need. Would love to do that. I give very rough and honest feedback, but I will always encourage you to be yourself. Just champion yourself. Be proud of it. So that is the wrap up of the podcast for today. It is a little longer than usual, but this is a very important topic for all aspiring authors to consider. So happy writing, get to it, stop listening to me and own your journey. If you haven't picked up a copy of The Lattice Scheme because you're an aspiring author, I don't blame you because you don't got time to read probably. If you do want a copy, they are on sale through December. Probably going to keep it on sale through January, not the ebook, but it is a fantastic book and there is a lot to be inspired by in it. So I would encourage you to pick that up. Otherwise, please subscribe to my channel and I hope to see you in future podcasts about writing and deeper literary dives.